The unbeatable champion. Commander Excel Vera stood at the edge of the combat arena, her sharp golden eyes scanning the sea of cheering aliens. The crowd chanted her name, their voices vibrating through the metal walls of the galactic combat arena. Excel Vera didn't smile. Victory was normal for her. She had won for 50 years straight. No opponent had ever lasted more than 2 minutes against her. She flexed her muscular arms, her crimson armor gleaming under the artificial lights. She was a Virexian warrior, stronger, faster, and smarter than most species in the galaxy. For decades, her name had been a symbol of power. No one dared to challenge her now. No one was that foolish. Yet today, something strange was happening. The Galactic Council had announced a mystery challenger. No name, no species, just a message. Prepare for the fight of your life. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Who would face Excel Vera? Another powerful species like the Brachynox, or perhaps a genetically enhanced cyborgian. She didn't care. The result would be the same. She would win. High above the arena, a massive holographic screen flickered to life. The announcer's deep voice echoed through the stadium. Today, we witness the impossible. The undefeated champion, Commander Excel Vera of Virexia, will face a challenger from the far-off planet Earth, a human. The arena fell silent. Excel Vera's eyes narrowed. A human. She had heard of them. Weak, soft creatures from a backwater planet. They were fragile, emotional, and lacked natural defenses. Their muscles were weak, their reflexes slow. Why would a human step into her arena? The crowd erupted into laughter. Across the galaxy, humans were known as diplomats, not warriors. They were storytellers and explorers, not fighters. The announcer continued, introducing Captain Ethan Cross. A metal door hissed open on the far side of the arena. A single figure stepped through the fog. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Ethan Cross didn't wear high-tech armor or alien battle suits. He wore simple, black tactical gear. His face was humanly plain. Short brown hair, light skin, and calm, focused eyes. He looked more like a teacher than a warrior. Excel Vera crossed her arms, smirking. "Is this a joke?" she asked, her voice amplified for the crowd. "This is your challenger." Ethan didn't respond. He simply adjusted the fingerless gloves on his hands and locked his eyes on her. His calm gaze made Excel Vera frown. "Human," she said, stepping forward. "Do you know what happens here? This is not a game. This is survival. You should surrender now. Walk away while you can." Ethan tilted his head. "You think I'm afraid?" Excel Vera barked a laugh. "I don't think. I know. I can smell fear, human. And you." She inhaled deeply. "You reek of it." For the first time, Ethan smiled. A small, knowing grin. "That's not fear," he said softly. "That's excitement." Excel Vera's smile vanished. Something about his voice made her uneasy. The crowd sensed the tension and grew quiet. The arena's mechanical voice spoke. "Combat begins in 10 seconds. Prepare for battle." Excel Vera cracked her knuckles. Ethan shifted his stance slightly, his feet balanced, arms relaxed. He wasn't trembling. He didn't look nervous. Why not? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A deafening horn blasted through the arena. The fight had begun. Excel Vera moved first. She lunged across the battlefield with lightning speed, aiming a punch straight at Ethan's head. The air crackled as her fist shot forward. The ground beneath her cracked from the force. Ethan leaned sideways. Her fist missed by an inch. Her eyes widened. No one dodged that punch. No one. She swung again, faster this time. Ethan ducked. She tried a low kick. He jumped back. For the next 60 seconds, Excel Vera attacked with relentless fury, her fists and legs blurring. The ground shattered with each strike. Ethan dodged every hit. The crowd, once laughing, now sat in stunned silence. The champion of 50 years couldn't land a single blow on this human. Breathing heavily, Zelvera paused. "You can't dodge forever," she growled. Ethan smiled again. "Who said I'm just dodging?" Before she could react, he stepped in and delivered a quick, sharp punch to her ribs. The impact echoed through the arena. Zelvera stumbled back, gasping. The crowd roared. Her mind raced. How had this weak human hurt her? Her ribs ached. That wasn't possible. No one had ever hit her before. Ethan raised his fists. "You believed no one could beat you," he said. "You were wrong." Zelvera clenched her fists, eyes blazing with fury. For the first time in her life, she felt something unfamiliar. The human challenger. The crowd stood frozen, their collective breath caught in disbelief. The arena had never seen such a moment. Commander Zelvera, the undefeated champion of 50 years, had been struck for the first time. The sound of that single punch echoed like a crack through history, shattering the illusion of her invincibility. Zelvera's chest heaved as she stepped back, her mind racing. Pain pulsed through her ribs, sharp and undeniable. No opponent had ever laid a hand on her. She was faster than the wind, stronger than steel. Yet here stood this human, this fragile creature from a primitive world, who had done the impossible. Her instincts screamed at her, "Retreat. Reassess. This human is dangerous." But Zelvera silenced the thought. She was Phyrexian. Warriors didn't retreat. They conquered. Ethan Cross stood across the arena, relaxed, balanced. His face remained calm, but his eyes, those eyes revealed something unsettling. He wasn't just here to fight. He was here to win. The crowd shifted from silence to a nervous murmur. Laughter turned into uncertainty. The galactic combat arena had hosted battles for a century, and every witness felt it. Something unprecedented was happening. High above, the announcer's voice crackled through the speakers. "Commander Zelvera has been hit. History has been made tonight." The audience erupted, some in cheers, others in disbelief. The alien spectators, who once mocked the human, now leaned forward in their seats. They came to see an easy win. Instead, they saw the impossible unfold. Zelvera's jaw tightened. She couldn't allow this to continue. She had to crush the human, quickly, before the seeds of doubt took root in the minds of billions watching across the galaxy. Her voice, amplified across the stadium, cut through the noise. "Enjoy your lucky punch, human. It will be your last." Ethan tilted his head, his lips curling into a slight smile. "Lucky? You think I didn't plan that?" The comment hit her harder than the punch. He was toying with her. No one toyed with Zelvera. She roared and charged forward, her movements blurred into a crimson streak of power. The ground cracked beneath her feet with each step. She swung her arm in a sweeping strike meant to break bones. Ethan shifted, ducked, and sidestepped. Her fist slammed into the arena wall behind him, shattering the reinforced metal like glass. Gasps filled the arena. The wall was 3 feet thick, designed to withstand plasma explosions, and she'd obliterated it in a single strike. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock was that Ethan wasn't there when her fist connected. Zelvera spun, searching. Where did he go? A shadow flickered behind her. Too late. A sharp blow landed on her knee joint. Pain shot through her leg, forcing her to stumble. She growled and lashed out, but Ethan was already gone, circling to her left. Another hit, this time on her shoulder. Her arm went momentarily numb. The crowd roared louder now, caught in the rhythm of the unexpected battle. From the VIP balcony, Supreme Arbiter Calyx leaned forward, his elongated silver eyes narrowing. "This human fights differently," he muttered. Beside him, Admiral Threx of the Bracanox agreed. "He doesn't fight like a soldier. He fights like a predator." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Humans were considered minor players in galactic politics. They were curious explorers, clever traders, and persistent diplomats. Not warriors. Yet here stood a human who moved like a shadow and struck like a scalpel. Back in the arena, Selvera gritted her teeth. Her body ached in places she never thought could hurt. The human didn't fight fair. He didn't meet her strength with strength. He was methodical, targeting joints, tendons, and pressure points. She leaped backward, creating distance. Her vision blurred slightly. How long had it been since she felt exhaustion? "You're slower now," Ethan said, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Tired, aren't you?" Selvera spat on the ground. "I've crushed warriors twice your size. Human, you're nothing." "Is that what you tell yourself to feel safe?" he asked. "I studied you, Commander. 50 years undefeated. But you've never fought a human before." She lunged again. This time, she was smarter, feinting left before striking right. Ethan reacted just a second slower. Her elbow grazed his side. His breath hitched, and he staggered back. The crowd screamed in excitement. The champion hit him. But Selvera didn't feel the triumph she expected. That single strike should have incapacitated him. Yet Ethan only winced and recovered. "How?" He rubbed his side and grinned. "Not bad," he said, "but you still telegraph your punches." Her rage surged. She charged again, unleashing a flurry of strikes. Ethan dodged, blocked, and parried. His movements weren't mechanical like a machine. They were adaptable, instinctive, reactive. He was evolving mid-fight. And then she realized the terrifying truth. He was learning her style in real time. She roared, swinging a massive kick. Ethan ducked, slid forward, and slammed his fist into her abdomen. Her armor cracked. The sound sent shockwaves through the stadium. Selvera stumbled back, coughing. Her hands instinctively clutched her stomach. Pain radiated through her core. For the first time since stepping into an arena 50 years ago, she felt vulnerable. Ethan straightened, breathing heavily but standing firm. "You think strength alone wins wars. No, it's adaptability. Humans, we don't stop. We learn, we evolve, we adapt." Selvera's heart pounded in her chest. The announcer's voice boomed again. "Round 1. Concluded. Fighters, return to your corners." The crowd erupted into deafening noise. Half cheered for the undefeated champion. The other half cheered for the challenger who had made the impossible possible. As mid-drones hovered toward Selvera, she sat heavily on the bench in her corner. Her muscles ached. Her pride burned. Across the arena, Ethan Cross stood quietly, sipping water, his eyes locked on hers. There was no arrogance there, only calm, calculating focus. Her battle instincts whispered to her, "This is no ordinary human. This is a predator. And you might not survive him." The first clash. The arena's atmosphere crackled with tension as the fighters retreated to their corners. The crowd murmured with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. The undefeated champion, Commander Selvera, was hurt. The human challenger, Captain Ethan Cross, stood unshaken. Above the arena, the holographic screen displayed the damage report. Commander Selvera. Armor integrity, 74%. Injury detection, rib fracture, abdominal trauma, joint strain. Captain Ethan Cross. Armor integrity, 92%. Injury detection, minor bruising, left side. The spectators gasped. In 50 years, Selvera had never been outmatched like this. Even the galaxy's deadliest warriors barely scratched her. But this human had not only survived round 1, he'd damaged her. Selvera sat rigidly on her bench as a medical drone scanned her ribs. The dull pain pulsed beneath her armor, but she refused to acknowledge it. Pain was weakness, and Virexians were warriors, not fragile prey. The drone's voice buzzed in her ear. Hairline fracture. Administering localized nanite repair. A cold sensation seeped into her side as microscopic machines repaired the damage. Across the arena, Ethan Cross sat calmly, eyes closed, breathing in a slow, steady rhythm. A medic approached him with a stim pack, but he raised a hand. "I'm fine," he said softly. His focus never wavered. He wasn't here to survive. He was here to win. The announcer's voice boomed through the stadium. "Prepare for round 2. Fighters, to your positions." The crowd roared, their earlier laughter replaced by raw anticipation. Excel Vera rose, rolling her shoulders. Her pride stung more than her ribs. How had this human done it? Strength alone couldn't explain his performance. He didn't just react to her attacks. He anticipated them. She stepped into the center of the arena and glared across the battlefield. Ethan Cross mirrored her, his expression unreadable. His calm eyes unsettled her more than any battle-scarred warrior ever had. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Fight. Zelvera launched herself forward with terrifying speed. This time, she didn't aim for his head or torso. She aimed for the ground. Her massive fist slammed into the arena floor, sending a seismic shockwave through the battlefield. The metal surface cracked and buckled. Dust and debris shot into the air, creating a smoke screen. In the chaos, she listened carefully, her species' hypersensitive hearing locked onto Ethan's footsteps. There, 2 steps to her right. She pivoted and struck. Her arm lashed out like a cannon. The air whistled as her fist rocketed toward him. But she hit nothing. The smoke cleared to reveal Ethan standing behind her, untouched. Zelvera's breath caught in her throat. "Impossible," she whispered. "You can't be that fast." Ethan shrugged. "I'm not faster than you," he said. "I just know where you're going to hit." She lunged again, swinging wide. He ducked. She kicked. He twisted away. Every move she made, he anticipated. Her fury grew with each failed strike. She was faster, stronger, more experienced, yet this human moved through the fight like a ghost. "Fight me," she snarled, launching a spinning backfist. Ethan dodged, stepped into her space, and delivered a sharp elbow to her temple. Her vision blurred, and she staggered back. The crowd gasped. Zelvera was on the defensive. Ethan didn't press the attack. He stood still, breathing evenly. "You're predictable," he said. "You fight like a soldier, strong, direct, efficient. But soldiers follow patterns, and patterns are easy to break." Zelvera's fists clenched. His words cut deeper than his strikes. The galactic combat arena's audience, spread across thousands of worlds, leaned closer to their screens. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were fragile, short-lived creatures who preferred peace over conflict. Yet this one was dissecting the galaxy's greatest warrior like a puzzle. Zelvera inhaled deeply, trying to suppress her frustration. Anger clouded judgment. She needed to adapt. But Ethan was already adapting faster. She darted forward, feinting a left jab while preparing a brutal right hook. A deceptive move she used countless times. Ethan shifted his weight left, falling into her trap. Her right hook came down like a sledgehammer. A direct hit. Ethan crumpled to the ground, coughing. Blood trickled from his mouth. The crowd erupted in relief. Zelvera panted, standing over him. "Predict that," she spat. Ethan groaned, rolling onto his side. His left arm trembled, his breath shallow. Zelvera stepped closer, preparing the final strike. But then she saw it, the faint smile on his bloodied lips. A chill crawled up her spine. Without warning, Ethan rolled and kicked the ground. The shattered debris around him exploded into the air, temporarily blinding her. She roared in frustration and swung blindly. Ethan was already gone. A sharp blow struck her left knee. Then another hit her right elbow. Her body faltered. She swung again, but Ethan slipped past her defenses and delivered a final powerful strike to the back of her neck. Zelvera collapsed to one knee. The crowd gasped. Their champion was kneeling, defeated not by brute force, but by superior tactics. Ethan's voice, strained but firm, broke the silence. "Strength isn't everything," he said, standing above her. "Adaptability wins wars, and humans adapt." Zelvera's vision swam. Her limbs felt like lead. How had this happened? How had a human, a species she considered prey, broken her defense? The arena's lights dimmed, and the announcer declared, "End of round 2. Challenger Ethan Cross leads." The crowd roared in disbelief. Zelvera, kneeling on the broken battlefield, clenched her fists. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just fighting an opponent. She was fighting fear, and Ethan Cross stood above her, his eyes already calculating his next move. The unpredictable strategy. Commander Zelvera knelt in the center of the galactic combat arena, her chest heaving as cold reality settled in. For the first time in 50 years, she was losing. The arena floor beneath her was cracked and scorched from the ferocity of the fight. Around her, the crowd's energy shifted from certainty to shock. The champion who once stood unchallenged now knelt before a human, a species long dismissed as insignificant. Across the battlefield, Ethan Cross stood tall, his face bruised and bloodied, but his posture steady. His dark eyes, sharp and focused, remained locked on her. He was breathing hard, but not with exhaustion. It was the focused breathing of a predator preparing for the final strike. Above them, the massive holographic scoreboard displayed the impossible. Round 1. Draw. Round 2. Human challenger leads. Damage report. Zelvera. Critical joint damage, internal bruising, cognitive fatigue. Ethan Cross. Surface-level injuries, mild fatigue. The arena erupted into chaotic noise. Billions of viewers across the galaxy witnessed the unthinkable. The warrior who never lost was being systematically dismantled. Zelvera forced herself to her feet. Her legs wobbled, and the nanites in her bloodstream worked overtime to repair her damaged muscles. The pain was sharp, but the humiliation was sharper. Her comm implant crackled. It was her mentor, General Cathor, speaking from the Virexian warship orbiting above the arena. His voice was low and urgent. "Zelvera, regroup. He's not stronger than you. He's outthinking you. Humans, they fight with strategy, not brute force." She gritted her teeth. "I know. He's watching for patterns. Break them." Zelvera took a deep breath, rolling her shoulders. Yes, that was the key. This human didn't overpower her. He outmaneuvered her by reading her predictable style. She had spent decades perfecting her combat techniques, but perfection was a pattern, and patterns could be broken. The arena's announcer spoke. Round 3. Fighters. Ready. Ethan's lips twitched into a faint smile. He thought he had already won. 3, 2, 1. Fight. Zelvera charged, but this time she didn't aim directly for Ethan. She twisted mid-stride, zigzagging unpredictably. Her movements became erratic, wild, even. Ethan's expression shifted from calm to wary. His calculating eyes tried to lock onto her rhythm, but she gave him none. Her first strike came from an unexpected angle, low from the left. Ethan dodged, but barely. Her follow-up came immediately, a spinning back fist that smashed into his ribs with brutal force. He stumbled, coughing. Blood splattered the ground. The crowd roared. Zelvera pressed her advantage, unleashing a chaotic flurry of strikes from every direction. Gone was the precise soldier. In her place was a berserker, a whirlwind of violence. Ethan blocked, dodged, and countered where he could, but she was relentless. He retreated toward the arena's edge, and she knew she had him cornered. She swung a massive uppercut. He ducked, but she was ready. Her knee shot upward, catching his jaw. His head snapped back. Ethan crumpled to the ground. The crowd exploded in deafening cheers. The champion had turned the tide. Zelvera towered over him, breathing heavily. "Not so confident now, are you, human?" she growled. Ethan groaned, wiping blood from his mouth. His breath was ragged. Slowly, he pushed himself to his knees. Confidence. He spat blood. You think this is confidence? He looked up at her, eyes blazing. This is human nature. Zelvera's instincts flared with warning. She stepped back, but it was too late. Ethan lunged forward and slammed his fist into the cracked arena floor. The ground beneath them groaned. Suddenly, the weakened metal gave way. The floor collapsed, swallowing both fighters into the darkness below. The audience screamed as debris rained down. The holographic screen lost visual contact. The announcer's voice faltered. Arena compromised. Initiating emergency protocols. For several seconds, the feed showed nothing but static. Then, the cameras found the fighters. They had fallen into the arena's underground training level, a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels and combat testing grounds. The lighting flickered, casting eerie shadows across the maze of metal corridors. Ethan was gone. Zelvera rose, coughing. Her body ached. The collapse had separated them. The ground around her was uneven, littered with broken machinery. The environment favored neither fighter. It was unfamiliar territory for both. The announcer's voice crackled through hidden speakers. Round 3 continues. Combatants must locate each other and engage. Zelvera's heart pounded. This wasn't a straightforward fight anymore. It was a hunt. She activated her helmet's thermal vision. The heat signatures of the broken machinery glowed faintly. Ethan's trail was faint but detectable. Her feet moved silently across the metal floor. She followed the traces of his body heat down a corridor lined with inactive combat droids. Her ears strained for sound. A soft metallic click echoed from behind. Zelvera spun just as a heavy training drone fell from the ceiling. It crashed beside her, distracting her for a critical second. From the shadows, Ethan struck. His boot hit her side with brutal force, slamming her against the wall. Pain exploded through her ribs. Ethan didn't stop. He attacked with precision. 2 hits to her shoulder joint, 1 to her knee, forcing her into a defensive stance. His strikes were surgical. Zelvera roared and swung wildly, but he ducked and swept her legs. She crashed to the floor. Ethan loomed above her. His chest heaved with exertion, his face streaked with dirt and blood. His expression was unreadable. "You changed tactics," he said softly. "Smart move." Zelvera tried to rise, but her limbs refused. The strikes to her joints had temporarily disabled her. "But humans, we don't just adapt to the fight," Ethan continued. "We adapt to the warrior." He knelt beside her, voice low. "I learned your new style after the first 3 strikes." Zelvera stared at him, disbelief and anger twisting in her gut. She prided herself on adaptability. Yet this human, this weak, fragile creature, had analyzed, adapted, and countered her within seconds. The announcer's voice interrupted. "Round 3. Over. Challenger Ethan Cross maintains the lead." The feed switched back to the main arena screen. The crowd, stunned into silence, processed what they had just witnessed. The champion of the galaxy had been hunted and outsmarted in unfamiliar terrain. In the VIP box, Supreme Arbiter Calyx leaned forward. "This human, he doesn't fight like a soldier." Admiral Threx nodded grimly. "No, he fights like a survivor." The med drones descended to retrieve the fighters. Ethan accepted their help without a word. Zelvera, pride shattered, swatted the drones away. Her legs trembled as she stood on her own. Across the debris-strewn floor, Ethan's eyes met hers once more. And for the first time, Zelvera realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting for her title. She was fighting against something far more dangerous: human willpower. The breaking point. The galactic combat arena was silent. The once roaring crowd, billions watching across thousands of worlds, sat in stunned disbelief. For 50 years, they had seen warriors rise and fall, but never had they witnessed this. Commander Zelvera, the undefeated champion, had just suffered another brutal loss. Not to an enhanced cyborg, not to a genetically engineered brute, but to a human. Ethan Cross stood in the center of the underground battlefield, his hands resting on his knees, breathing heavily. His body bore the scars of the fight. His left eye was swollen, his lip cut, and his ribs ached with each breath. But he remained standing. Giselle Vera, on the other hand, did not. She sat against a collapsed wall, her powerful limbs trembling. Her breathing was uneven, her vision blurred. For the first time in her life, her body refused to obey her. Every nerve screamed in protest. The announcer's voice echoed across the battlefield. Round 3. Over. Challenger Ethan Cross leads the match. The sound of his name, declared as the superior warrior, sent a firestorm of emotions raging inside her. Disbelief, rage, humiliation. She forced herself upright, her muscles screaming in protest. I won't fall. I won't break. The med drones hovered nearby, scanning both fighters. Giselle Vera ignored them, waving off the minor healing treatments offered to her. The humiliation of accepting medical aid in front of the entire galaxy was too much to bear. Across from her, Ethan did accept the help. He allowed the drones to close his wounds, slow the bleeding, and inject a pain reliever into his system. He did not see it as weakness, only as preparation. Giselle Vera frowned. That is why he is winning. He doesn't fight with ego. He fights to survive. She had faced thousands of warriors, all of them powerful in their own way, but none like this. They had all relied on strength, speed, or brute force. But Ethan fought with something more dangerous. He fought with intelligence. The arena lights flickered back to full power as the announcer's voice boomed again. Prepare for round 4. The audience erupted into cheers, but Giselle Vera barely heard them. Her focus was locked on Ethan. Across the battlefield, he rolled his shoulders, testing his movements. His injuries slowed him, but she noticed something troubling. He had learned her tactics. Again, in the last fight, she had abandoned her rigid, disciplined style in favor of chaotic, unpredictable movements. And yet he still adapted. Her heart pounded in her chest. For the first time since she had begun fighting, she felt something foreign creeping into her mind. It wasn't frustration. It wasn't anger. It was doubt. She clenched her fists. No, she was Commander Giselle Vera, the greatest warrior in the known galaxy. She would not let a human take her legacy. She took a slow, deep breath and reminded herself of the simple truth. He is still just flesh and bone. He bleeds. He can be broken. A new plan formed in her mind. Round 4. The shift in power. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Fight. This time, Giselle Vera did not charge forward. Instead, she waited. Ethan hesitated for the first time. His strategy had been built on reaction, studying her patterns and countering. But now, with her standing still, body relaxed, watching him with those unreadable golden eyes, she forced him to make the first move. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He took a slow step forward. Another. He was cautious. Good. Giselle Vera let him come. When he was within striking distance, he lunged, fast and efficient, aiming for the weak points in her armor. She did not dodge. Ethan's fist slammed into her ribs, but she absorbed the impact, locking her arms around his extended limb. Trap. With a sudden twist of her entire body, she flipped Ethan over her shoulder and slammed him into the ground with bone-crushing force. The arena shook. The crowd gasped. Ethan grunted, stunned, but before he could recover, Giselle Vera was already moving. She lifted him off the ground and hurled him across the battlefield. His body hit the metal wall with a sickening crack. He collapsed onto one knee, coughing violently. Giselle Vera smirked. You learn, human, but so do I. She had been fighting like a warrior. Strategic, measured. She had played his game, allowing him to predict and counter her. Now she was fighting like a beast. Ethan rose shakily to his feet, but his breathing was labored. He had taken real damage. HFY Vera charge, moving with terrifying speed. She gave him no time to think, no space to breathe. Her strikes came wild and brutal. Knees, elbows, fists. She attacked not with skill, but with the sheer overwhelming force of a predator ripping apart prey. Ethan couldn't counter. For the first time, he was on the defensive. He dodged what he could, but her attacks kept coming. Faster, harder, relentless. Crack. Her knee connected with his ribs. Ethan stumbled. Smash. A vicious elbow to his jaw. Blood sprayed across the battlefield. Ethan's body sagged. The crowd roared. HFY Vera saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The pain. She had finally broken him. The fight was over. She raised her fist for the final strike, the one that would end this human's foolish challenge. And then, he laughed. HFY Vera froze. Ethan Cross, bloodied, battered, barely standing, was laughing. She frowned. Have you lost your mind, human? Ethan wiped the blood from his mouth. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes burned with something terrifying. Not fear, not pain. Determination. He grinned. You finally stopped underestimating me. Took you long enough. HFY Vera's heart pounded. Why? Why was he still standing? Ethan clenched his fists. The pain in his body was unbearable, but it didn't matter, because he had spent his entire life pushing past pain. He took a deep breath and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. Your mistake was thinking pain stops humans. Then he moved, faster than she expected, faster than she thought possible. And this time, Ethan wasn't just dodging. He was fighting back. The final battle. The galactic combat arena trembled with the force of the battle, but it was the collective tension of the audience that truly shook the galaxy. Billions of viewers across countless worlds sat on the edges of their seats, unable to tear their eyes away from the screen. Commander HFY Vera, undefeated champion of the galactic combat arena for 50 years, stood panting, her body battered and bruised. Across from her, Captain Ethan Cross, the human challenger, swayed on his feet, his face bloodied, ribs cracked, and body trembling with exhaustion. Yet his eyes, those unyielding, predatory eyes, still burned with determination. A holographic display overhead displayed the grim statistics. Commander HFY Vera, 63% combat capacity remaining. Captain Ethan Cross, 28% combat capacity remaining. The crowd roared as the announcer's voice crackled to life. Final round. Commencing in 10 seconds. The arena shifted beneath their feet. The once flat battlefield transformed as metallic plates rearranged themselves, forming jagged obstacles, trenches, and elevated platforms. This final round wouldn't be a test of brute strength alone. It would test strategy, adaptability, and endurance. HFY Vera's golden eyes narrowed. Her breathing was labored, and her body ached in ways she never imagined. But she was still Verexian, still the champion. Ethan Cross wiped blood from his mouth. His legs trembled beneath him, but he didn't fall. Pain was an old companion. He had been through worse. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fight. The hunt begins. HFY Vera lunged forward, her feet pounding against the shifting metal ground. She leaped to the nearest elevated platform, scanning for Ethan. Speed and surprise. That was her plan. But Ethan was already moving. He had darted into the maze of trenches below, using the environment to break her line of sight. She growled low in her throat. Clever. Always thinking. Her thermal vision activated, scanning the battlefield. Heat signatures flickered below. There, 200 meters northeast. HFY Vera leaped down and pursued, her footfalls echoing through the narrow corridors. She turned a corner and ducked just in time. A metal pipe, wielded like a club, slammed into the wall where her head had been. Sparks exploded. Ethan lunged from the shadows with precise, brutal efficiency. His attacks weren't elegant. They were calculated survival strikes aimed at joints and nerve clusters. Vera blocked the next hit with her forearm, feeling the bone-jarring impact. She countered with a powerful kick, but Ethan sidestepped, twisting her arm into a joint lock. Her instincts kicked in. She used her superior strength to lift him off the ground and hurl him across the corridor. He smashed into a metal crate with a pained grunt. She charged, but he rolled aside as her fist pulverized the crate where his head had been. Ethan scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. Her strength was overwhelming. But brute strength alone didn't win battles. "You're slowing down," he said, voice hoarse but taunting. Vera bared her teeth. "And you're breaking apart, human." She attacked again, and this time Ethan stood his ground. He met her charge with a precise sidestep and delivered a devastating elbow strike to her injured ribs. The crack echoed through the corridor. Vera staggered. Pain flared through her body. He had remembered the exact weak spot from their first clash. The shift in strategy. Ethan didn't press the attack. Instead, he retreated into the maze, forcing Vera to chase him. "He's luring me," she realized. But why? Her warrior's instincts screamed at her to stay cautious. But her pride, her deep-seated belief that she was the greatest warrior alive, urged her forward. She gave chase. The maze twisted and turned, the walls narrowing as she moved deeper into the labyrinth. Her steps slowed as unease crept into her mind. Where was he? Suddenly, her foot hit something hard and unfamiliar. She looked down. A thin, reflective wire was stretched across the ground. Before she could react, the wire snapped, triggering a concealed mechanism overhead. From the ceiling, a cylindrical device dropped and detonated with a deafening blast. A thick, black vapor hissed into the corridor, instantly disrupting her thermal vision. Vera coughed, stumbling backward. Her enhanced senses were overwhelmed by the chemical haze. A smoke trap. Footsteps echoed in the darkness. Ethan's voice came through the mist. "You're stronger, faster, better trained, but you forgot one thing about humans." Vera spun toward the sound, fists raised. Silence. "Wait. Listen." A faint whisper to her left. She struck out. Nothing. Ethan's voice came again, from behind. "We don't just adapt. We improvise." The moment she turned toward the voice, something struck the back of her knee. Her leg buckled. Another blow hit her shoulder, forcing her forward. Vera fell to her hands and knees. The smoke began to dissipate. Ethan stood over her, bruised and bleeding, clutching a length of broken pipe like a spear. His knuckles were white from gripping it so tightly. Her eyes met his. The fire burning in his gaze was more terrifying than any warrior she'd ever faced. She roared and lunged upward. Ethan moved with brutal efficiency, driving the metal pipe into the joint of her left shoulder. The impact dislocated the joint with a sickening crack. Vera screamed in pain. Ethan ripped the pipe free and delivered a final, crushing blow to her temple. The champion collapsed. The moment of victory. The crowd, watching through the hovering camera drones, sat in utter disbelief. The scoreboard updated in real time. Final round. Human challenger wins. The arena's silence shattered as the announcer's voice boomed across the galaxy. The winner, Captain Ethan Cross of Earth. The audience erupted into chaos. Some cheered. Others stared in shock. Across the galactic network, social feeds exploded with disbelief. A human had defeated the galaxy's greatest warrior. Ethan dropped the pipe and fell to his knees. His vision swam. His ribs screamed with pain, and every muscle in his body protested. But he had won. He didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion. Med-drones swarmed the battlefield. One approached Vera's motionless form and administered emergency nanites. Another hovered beside Ethan, offering support. He waved it away. He needed to see her. With great effort, Ethan stood and limped toward the fallen champion. She lay still, her chest rising and falling faintly. Her face was bloodied, her body broken. But when her eyes opened, Ethan froze. There was no hatred in her gaze, no fury, only recognition. "You are not like the others," she whispered through cracked lips. Ethan knelt beside her. "Humans never stop. We adapt. We endure." Zelvera's head tilted slightly. "Perhaps that is why we feared you." Her eyes fluttered shut as the med-drones sedated her for emergency treatment. Ethan sat back, breathing deeply. The fight was over. But the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. High above, in the Council's observation chamber, Supreme Arbiter Calyx turned to his advisors. His expression was unreadable. "Mark this day," he said softly. "The galaxy has just changed. The unthinkable outcome." The galactic combat arena stood frozen in time. The echoes of the final blow still lingered in the air, the metallic tang of blood and sweat mixing with the heavy silence. Across thousands of worlds, billions of spectators remained speechless. Commander Excelvera, the undefeated champion of 50 years, lay broken, unconscious, and defeated. And standing above her, battered but victorious, was Captain Ethan Cross, a human. The announcer's voice, usually booming with energy, wavered with disbelief. "The match has ended. The victor, Captain Ethan Cross of Earth." A slow ripple of sound moved through the audience. It began as murmurs, whispers of shock, disbelief, awe. Then the galaxy erupted. Some cheered, their voices rising in wild celebration. Others shouted in outrage, unable to accept the result. Bookmakers who had wagered against humanity collapsed in despair. Warriors of every species watched in stunned silence, their belief in the undisputed champion shattered before their very eyes. The impossible had happened. The aftermath. Ethan stood unmoving, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His entire body screamed in agony. His ribs felt cracked, his muscles ached, and every breath came with sharp pain. But he didn't falter. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him like a collapsing star. He had won. Not just against a warrior, not just against a champion, but against an entire idea, the belief that humans were weak. And yet, standing over Xelvera's unconscious form, he didn't feel like a conqueror. He didn't feel triumphant. He just felt tired. The med-drones descended, scanning both fighters. One hovered over Xelvera, administering rapid healing nanites. Another floated beside Ethan, offering medical assistance. He barely registered the cold press of a stim injection into his neck. The Council's private observation chamber loomed high above the arena, a vast window allowing the galaxy's rulers to witness history unfold. Supreme Arbiter Calyx leaned forward, his silver eyes narrowing. "Unbelievable," he murmured. Beside him, Admiral Threx of the Bracanox race exhaled sharply. "A human did this," he said. "One human." The implications were terrifying. Xelvera awakens, a sharp intake of breath. Pain. Xelvera's eyes flickered open to the blinding lights above. Her vision swam, her limbs numb from both pain and the medical nanites working to repair her. For a brief moment, confusion filled her mind. Then it all came rushing back. The fight, the blows, the human. She turned her head slowly, her gaze locking onto Ethan, who sat nearby on a medical bench. He was being patched up by the drones, his expression unreadable. He noticed her staring. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged, but understanding passed between them. He had bested her, not through raw power, but through resilience, through adaptability, through sheer, unyielding will. For the first time in her life, she felt no anger toward her opponent, only respect. A deep, guttural chuckle rumbled in her chest, though it sent sharp pain through her ribs. "I lost," she said hoarsely. "I still cannot believe it." Ethan exhaled, wiping dried blood from his cheek. "Neither can the rest of the galaxy." Xelvera stared at him for a long moment, then let out a low sigh. "Perhaps The galaxy should have seen this coming. Ethan arched an eyebrow. She tilted her head. We always assumed your kind was fragile. That you were meant to be explorers, not warriors. A slow smirk crossed Ethan's face. Maybe that's why we're dangerous. Telvera's gaze sharpened. Because you don't fight for dominance. Ethan shook his head. No, because when humans fight, it's never just for ourselves. The council decides. The Supreme Orator's voice rang through the Grand Chamber. The ruling members of the Galactic Council stood gathered, their faces grave. The first human combatant has defeated the galaxy's greatest warrior, Calyx said. The implications are clear. The question now is, what do we do about humanity? Murmurs of unease spread through the chamber. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as insignificant, their influence minor in the galactic hierarchy. But now, they were a threat. Admiral Threx slammed his fist onto the table. We must ensure they never gain a foothold in galactic warfare. If a single human can do this, imagine what an army of them could accomplish. A soft voice countered, or perhaps we have been blind. All eyes turned to Councilwoman Vecra of the Zavani, a species known for their foresight. She met their stares calmly. This human was not fighting for power, she said. He did not seek to conquer. He fought because he was challenged, and he won because of what his kind is capable of. Calyx exhaled slowly. And what is that? Vecra smiled. Endurance. Willpower. The ability to turn every loss into a lesson and every lesson into a victory. Silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Calyx spoke. Then the decision is clear. A pause. Then. Humanity is no longer an observer of this galaxy. They are now a force to be reckoned with. The legend begins. The news spread like wildfire. Across the stars, Ethan Cross became a name whispered in fear and awe. For some, he was a hero, the first of his kind to break the barrier of expectation. To others, he was a warning, a glimpse into what humanity was truly capable of. On Earth, his victory was celebrated as the moment humanity announced itself to the galaxy. And for Ethan himself, as he stood at the edge of the combat arena, staring out into the endless void of space, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. From the ashes of battle, a new legend had been born, and the galaxy would never be the same again.